Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. The tech just defeated me slightly. But luckily I have colleagues who are much better at it than me. So we'll just give it another minute and get started and just see how we're getting on. Okay, should we give it a go? Again, thanks so much for joining us this evening for this sort of a little bit of a delve, but not too deeply into Pasture for Life certification. The lineup is we've got a certified member, Andy Rumming, also a certified butcher, who's going to give us a no hold bars, what his experience was like getting certified. Very keen that you get the clear picture. Then I'm going to show you a bit of the sort of behind the scenes stuff and the sort of things that you'd be coming across when you do the online work. And then we're going to hear from Nigel Franklin, who is one of our supply chain managers, who is going to give you a sort of an update on what he's seeing as the benefits of membership in terms of selling, whether it be stock or animals for meat. So Andy, are you there? Hold on. Andy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Do you want to crack on?
Yes. So can you see me as well?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So, right. Well, thanks for inviting me along. And yes, so certification. So I was just really going to, as Philippa said, talk about sort of my experience through the process. So I think the first thing I would say is I think you want to be really clear about why you want to be certified. Is it for kind of ethical reasons? Is it for environmental reasons? Is it for financial reasons? And to be quite honest, for me, it was a bit of all of those things. I'd really enjoyed the forum. I'd learned a lot. It given me confidence to sort of push on with rotational grazing and things. And I really liked the Pasture for Life organisation and wanted to kind of immerse myself in it more. That was one of my big drivers. And I wanted to set up I wanted to make selling meat direct quite a big part of my business. And so this kind of fitted the bill. So I think being clear about why you want to do it. If you don't really want to do it and feel pushed into doing it, it's probably not for you. So just kind of sort of check through about why you're doing this. The other bit that I guess I looked at quite carefully is how much of a change is it? So we already had about 80, well, perhaps 80 suckler cows in 2 different herds. And we had basically, we were kind of most of the way there. So for our business, I looked very carefully about, was this a huge change? Was this a minor change? And that was really important because in our business, we've got 6 partners. So there's my dad, my mum, my uncle, my aunt, myself, and my brother. And at that point, me and my brother were not partners in the business. So the only way we could, so we had to kind of sell this to the people that controlled the business. And then we had to be sure that they would abide by the rules and basically not mess it up. Because if we were going to put this certification mark on our farm and our meat, and essentially try and profit from this mark, it has to have integrity. And so you've got to have everybody in your farm business on board. They've got to understand sort of why you're doing it, and they've got to understand the rules and the boundaries. And so I felt that organic was something that we couldn't do because we couldn't get agreement on that. Whereas on Pasture for Life, because it had a different emphasis, and because of some of the preconceptions of our business partners, which they didn't have any negative preconceptions of Pasture for Life, it was something we could pursue. And so I think that's a really key thing. So who in your business relationships, family relationships, who could mess this up? Okay, so who could be a sort of a hump in the road or a complete blocker? And are they on board? Can you get them on board? And if you can, that's great. This is good. So I thought it's not a huge change. People can get on board. This could work. The other thing I would say is that another question is, have you got any experience of certification bodies and certification visits? So if you have, this potentially helps. And it is, it is something that is an essential part of the scheme. So basically, a third party will be turning up at some point and will spend potentially up to half a day looking in quite some detail at all aspects of your farm. So this is looking at the animals, looking at the accommodation, looking at your medical records, looking at feed records, looking at a whole manner of things. You've got accident book, a whole list of detailed things. Now, for us, we were already Red Tractor certified. Now, lots of people have got a view on Red Tractor, but for us, my dad and uncle were selling store cattle at our local market, and basically, when trade is good, no one cares about no one cares too much about Red Tractor. But when trade is difficult, our experience is that it had a significant financial benefit. So we were already Red Tractor certified, and that actually meant that our path into Pasture for Life certification was significantly easier, because all of that, I would say, foundation things like like some of the basic animal health and welfare side, we already had a kind of an organized way of presenting that information. And so I think that helped us. What did make it, or something we had to kind of cross, was that I wanted one certifying body to do both inspections at the same time. And we have managed that, but it is, Philippa or Nigel might say more about that. So we've had that happen. And that was quite useful. Although in the early days, I don't think we've ever had the same person twice. And they're obviously used to doing a lot more Red Tractor than they are Pasture for Life. So it has sometimes been a little bit of a learning process. But yeah, so that's how we came at it. The other thing I think I would point out is, so will you prioritize the time to do what you've got to do? And yeah, kind of that's important. So as well as the actual visit, there is doing your kind of declaration forms, which Philippa might talk about, which is kind of all online. And there is potentially filling in the tracks software, which is sort of an animal management system. and I'm slightly behind in that, so I need to get on and update mine. But it's not too onerous, but it's another password, another system. It's not difficult to use, but it's part of the deal. It's important. Again, it's this integrity. If people are looking for the mark needs to mean something, and it needs to have integrity behind it, and we're the kind of the foundation of that integrity. So yeah, so that's what that was my thinking getting into it, and now we're into it. Yeah, it's fine, and it's it's part of our identity, to be quite honest. I think you probably know I've always been quite a fan of Pasture for Life, and so yeah, it's being certified is really important to me, and works really well. The Nigel will say about the kind of the benefits from it, so I won't stray into that. But I would say that, yeah, now the other people in the business, so my uncle's quite proud of it, and he tells people about it. My dad's likes it when he sees perhaps some of the financial sides of it. And yeah, so it kind of works, and it is not it's not one of the things that gets debated or causes any issues. One thing I did just want to say is that, so I had presumed when I initially sort of signed up that it was pretty much business as usual in terms of our changes, so it's minimal change. However, if you go into it thinking like that, I think you need to just be a bit careful. So the certification standards for ruminant livestock, you need to read them and pay particular attention to not just the ones that you have to do, but also the recommended ones, because over the time I've been in it, things have changed, and some of the recommendeds have actually moved into the kind of required side. So look at them really carefully, and make sure that you feel you can abide by those. And for the recommended ones where you're not sure, yeah, think about, in a scenario where perhaps they did in the future become required, how would you do that? Have you got a plan B? If you're unsure, talk to other people about that, talk to other producers, Nigel, myself, Philippa. There's always a way of doing it. And I've just looked through, so I've got a paper copy of the ones we originally signed up to, and I went through it with a green highlighter and highlighted a few things that I thought my other members of the family should read in black and white, just so they fully understood what this was about. And so in that stage, it was things like, for example, just pick a few of them. So breeding stock should be sourced from certified farms wherever possible. And at that point, that was quite tricky. But now, actually, it's not that tricky. So there is a diverse range of genetics out there from Pasture for Life certified farms. And so that, and again, buying breeding stock from certified farms, those were recommended, and we have managed to do that, which is really good. The other bits that came out were so this thing about, at times when conditions allow, certified animals must be maintained on rotational grass lays, permanent pasture. So they must have basically access to outside as much as possible. We're a housed system in the winter because of the flooding and various things. So yeah, and so it was understanding about how that worked in with the regulations, and it does work in, but we do a number of things to keep them out as long as possible and to get them out as early as possible. And I'm potentially looking at, if we can, letting them out for a certain period of time with a view to probably having to bring them back in until we get to end of March. So again, it's looking at those. So yeah, so it's this one, 4.55. When certified animals are housed for an overwintering period, they should be given access to pasture whenever conditions allow. So, you know, that's the one to look at. How it's recommended. I think it's still recommended, but how, you know, if it did get moved to a bit further on, how would you deal with that? Yeah, there's also, we use some cubicles as well, and there's a line about cubicles, and so that's something yeah, we looked at. So yes, yeah, so again, it's looking at that in detail. Yeah, the other one I pointed out was ridge and furrow fields must not be levelled. My father levelled all of his in the 80s and was very proud of the fact of how much time and effort he put into obliterating them. My uncle never did, and agriculturally they do make some operations tricky. So I'm sure none of you are thinking of this, but you know, there is some detail here that you've got to make sure that people understand, you know, what's can happen. Yeah, there's also some guidance on things about cutting silage before mid-July, but it says at least some fields. So we do cut some stuff earlier, we cut some stuff later, but it's, you know, look at particularly, I would say, the recommendeds in a lot of detail. So I think I'll probably, is that okay? Is that, yeah? I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Andy. No, that's really helpful and very, you know, good to get the honest feedback on the process, because it's yeah, there are things to think about. Some people might already be there and 100% and they can just crack on, but there might be other things that that need to be tweaked to allow for the certification to be successful. So right, I'm going to attempt to share a screen with you. I apologize in advance if it doesn't work.
Philippa, can we pick up a couple of questions whilst you're doing that?
Yes, of course.
So there's a question from Colin asking about, can you still use Mineralix? And there's also a question, Andy, did you use forage crops before certification? Do you use any now? David is growing Swedes, or Sweds as they're called up here in Scotland.
So we had a bit of a haphazard policy on minerals in the past, but now we do blood tests and use compliant boluses that have not got any, they're not cereal based when we need them. So we're not using any buckets. So we're using boluses in line with blood analysis. And then we've never grown any crops like Swedes or brassicas. We're all permanent pasture. And so that does make things straightforward for us. Yeah.
And the question about Mineralix is that, yes, they're allowed under the standards. We would want to know, or F&G, who are our certifying body, would want to know the ingredients. So if there was any grain or soy or GM in them, then they would be prohibited. But there are plenty out there that are allowed under the standards, so that's not a problem.
Some of the manufacturers do not make any of this information very easy to get hold of, particularly the GMO compliance. Yeah. But if you email them, they seem to have answered these questions many times before and have various certificates and things they can send you. But a lot of the AgriMin, you won't find it on the website. But if you send them an email, within a day, you've got everything you need. Yeah. And
it's likely that F&G would already know anyway. So just, you know, you just need to ask, just reach out and ask, and we can find out for you. So can you see my screen? Can you see a Pasture for Life certification? Yes, no?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute.
I can't see people at the moment. I can only see my screen. So great. Okay. this is a process, as Andy said. It is sort of a two-stage, well, three-stage process, really. What we would say getting started, and I suspect most of the people on this call are already members of Pasture for Life. If you're not, then join. And as Andy said, do familiarise yourself with the current standards. So they are in the process of being reviewed at the moment. We review them every 2 years, and we do that with a consultation with the membership. It's not just us, you know, laying down the law. It's like, you know, what do you think needs to be included? How can we support other people doing different things? So that's happening at the moment, and I expect there will be a notice about the consultation coming out in fairly decent time, with a view to us launching those new standards in the summer. So look out for that. There will be changes. There will be, as Andy again pointed out, there could be some changes that go from recommended to must do. Or there might be new things that come in as recommendations as things change. Once you've actually told us that you want to go through the process, there's just some basically jiggery pokery I have to do on the website to give you access to what you need to see. And there's two parts to this. So one of them is basically gathering all of your information. And it's information, if you've got it to hand, it's just very easy to get it included. And I mean things like herd numbers, if you've got organic certificates, what are or any kind of certificates, what are the expiry dates on them, those sorts of things. So if you've got that kind of stuff to hand, then you can fill in these things straight away. There's then something which is rather confusingly called an application, even though you've really started the application, but it's a self-assessment. It's your self-assessment against the standards. And it works with, so when you're going through, and I'll show you a couple of screens, when you're going through saying, well, I've got beef, but you don't have sheep, then it will only give you the questions about beef, basically, and obviously the wider sort of biodiversity and management, pasture management. So that process itself could, if you have to sort of like flip between the standards, just make sure you're comfortable and confident, then it could take an hour, maybe. So in that side of things, it's actually quite straightforward. When you go in, when you log in, you will have this welcome to Tracks. Now, Tracks is something that is a livestock management system, but we will put our hands up to say it is not working terribly well. And we are currently hoping to put together a brand new website, which will have a much easier, straightforward, logical system to it. But it is called Tracks. So when you go in, you're basically saying, right, am I going in as I'm a producer, or am I going in as a butcher? They're two different forms. It's very important that you acknowledge which one that you are. You can always go in to be a butcher later, but we would always say, if you are a producer in the first instance, do the farm first. It makes sense to do the farm first, and then we can look at being a butcher or the butchery side of things later. When you go into the system again, there are 4 main tabs. What you have to do, anything that's asterisked is a must-have. You have to fill it in. Anything that's not, don't worry about it at this stage. So you don't need to choose a default butcher. As I said before, these are sort of things that you'll need, like holding number of animals. You don't need to detail it. You don't need to enter ear tag numbers or anything at this stage. You just talk about how many and what breed. And again, as I mentioned, other certification information if you have it, or if you want to share it. It's not, it is optional. You don't need to do it. So there's these 4 tabs. The business details tab is you and contact details. The business address is what it says on the tin. Where it's very important to us at that point that you put in a postcode, because the postcode is where it links up to our map. So if you get onto the map, people can find you on our map. Livestock details, as just mentioned before, it will ask you about milking animals, dairy, milking animals, followers, and if it's all beef, sheep. So again, it's just the numbers, herd numbers, flock numbers, and then and the the number of actual animals. The website profile sounds like it's coming in at an odd place because you're not yet selling, if you like, but the website just gives, it's an opportunity, it's your shop window to anyone who's looking at our maps on the website. So there's some great examples on there. You can go onto the Our Farmers map or the Where to Buy Meat map, and you'll see some great examples of people talking about their farms, talking about their herds, how they manage pasture and what they feed. Great to put some pictures in there as well. So it is just your own little shop window. If you already have your own website, cut and paste, just get it into ours as well. There's no problem with that whatsoever. I should just say that I am always here to support in any of these. So if you've struggled or you think you've pressed the wrong button or you've done something like that, you just need to drop me a line or give me a call, and I'll be able to hopefully get you out of a muddle. And what you need to do, very importantly, is that on the right hand side there is a save button. Save draft, save draft, save draft. If you don't save your draft, it will disappear and you have to start again. That's one of the problems of the system, which we will rectify. But normally people can get through it okay. I've done that one. So then once you've done that and you basically send it for approval, you're then asked to do an application review. So this is the start a new application, which I know doesn't sound logical because you've already started, but this is the one that will give you the drop-down questions that you need to review your own system against our standards. You start off by saying, that you agree that this is who you are, and this is what you do, and yes, I will change. I will tell you if there are any problems that come up. And then it gets into a list of the standards. And as you see, there are 3 boxes there. So it's fully compliant, not applicable, or not fully compliant. If it's not fully compliant, it gives you an opportunity to tell us why. And then we can look at things about, advice or how we could change things, or actually you might just have clicked the wrong box and it just should be not applicable. Ideally, we want to see fully compliant all the way down, but we understand that that's not necessarily always the case. So there are probably, if you've got beef and lamb, there's probably around 30 of these questions that you need to answer. So it's good to have the standards by you, but it does give you in there the sort of the overarching words around each standard. By at the top there, abiding by both the letter and the spirit of the standards, and and that what you've put in is accurate and honest reflection of the business. So it's those sorts of things. It does get into more, have you got riverbanks, things like that, how do you manage them? Have you, how are you dealing? What are you feeding, or rather, more importantly, what are you not feeding? So look, some questions about we can really look at that in the first instance, say, okay, right, you're saying in there at this point that you are still feeding barley. You need to find a way to move away from that. How are you going to do it? So it might not be at this particular point in time that certification is quite right, but we're always there to help and support you move to a point where you can get there. As our booklet says, it can be done. So once you've done that, you basically submit the application, which comes through to us, and we can look at and we can see your website profile. We can see all the details about your animals, and we can see that your self-assessment against the standards. So that potentially will, set any, hairs running, or if there's any things that we're not very happy with, that we can come back to you and we'll talk to you about it. We won't just say no. We'll come back and say, right, okay, these are reasons why this would need to change. Once that's done and we're happy with it, then you, as the farm, need to decide whether how you want your inspection to go. So some buyers actually want an annual inspection, so that can be arranged. the most popular way for inspections to be done with us, and as I said, Organic Farmers and Growers are our certifying body. They will basically do a triannual agreement, which means over 3 years you have one on-farm inspection, and then the next 2 or the other 2 years you do a fairly comprehensive desktop audit. So they'll be looking for your grassland management plans, or your vet records, or your feed records, if there are any, those sorts of things. That's all payable to OFNG. We don't have any monetary say in that. We can also do joint inspections with biodynamic guys, soil association. That can tend to slow things down slightly, because it's just a case of getting the right person that can do both. But that can be arranged. And we're looking at trying to make that whole joint inspection side of things easier. Consulting on making the auditing of larger farms and enterprises on an annual basis will be looked at in the next standards review. Is that something that should be done for the larger farms? And they're also tackling the auditing of the supply chain. So how do we really audit our butchers and things like that? Because currently we don't. If there's on-farm butchery, the inspectors will go and have a look when doing the farm, the livestock inspection. But we need to be smarter and more transparent in what we're doing there, and we know that. In terms of timings for this sort of thing, well, once I've had an application through, I will get back to you within a matter of days, if not hours, depending on how busy it is. Once we've looked through your application that you submitted, and then we'll talk to you about the inspection choice and what you prefer to do. If you sign up for the triennial agreement, you are signing up to pay for 3 years, certain amount over 3 years, each year for 3 years. If you decide suddenly this is not for you and you're not going to be able to do it after 1 year, you are basically signing up to say, well, I'll pay for the remaining 2 years. So do think very carefully again on how you want to manage that. Once all the details have come through and we're happy with what we're doing, we will send everything over to OFNG. They'll process your information. They will send you an invoice and they'll arrange an inspection or an online audit, depending on where we are in the year. And maybe for an example would be, if you're a soil association and your inspection is not due, or is due like now, but we're not going to be able to get it done immediately, then it might be that in your first year you would do the online inspection, and then we would arrange for you to have the joint inspection next year with the soil association. That's the way we try and make things fit your business as well. OFNG won't do anything until you've paid them. And timings in terms of when that gets done can be on the availability of auditors. I've been with Pasture for Life for 4.5 years. I have known people get certified in a matter of weeks. I know people who started 4 years ago and they're still not there. And that's just because it slips down the list of priorities, or cost then becomes a factor, or what have you. So you are under no pressure to do anything than at your own pace and what suits you. Timings will depend on the availability of auditors. We do, there's a good spread across the country, and we're in Ireland as well, the North and the Republic. So we can, we will get it arranged. If you want to, once you've done that and it's all been approved, if you wanted to become a certified butcher, you're basically taking, if you're not actually doing the butchery on site, which is obviously in some people not possible, what we're asking you to do is take responsibility for the person who is doing your butchery. Are you getting back the animals that you sent? Are you happy with what they're doing? Are you confident with their the processing and their how things are kept? So that can be done at the next stage. In terms of the abattoirs that you are using, we have a list of approved abattoirs. If one crops up that we don't know about, and I know it's normally the other way around, that they're disappearing rather than cropping up, we check through their, if they've got an organic certification, chances are they're probably going to be okay. But what we do is look at the Food Standards Agency's audits. And we study those and look at what the overall rating was, if there were any minor and or worse major non-compliances. So we would basically potentially say, no, I'm sorry, you can't use them because of this, or wait till they've had the next audit and see if we're happy for them to be approved. So in terms of the butchery side of things, for the certification, there's no costs involved in that. It's just another shorter online process. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I'm probably an important question for most of you, the costs involved. So as a Past Life member, you're paying your membership for £100 plus VAT per year. These are the triennial option prices. So if you happen to be an OF&G licensee or any ones there, biodynamic, etc., Soil Association, then you get a discount, if you like, on that annual fee because we're doing it in conjunction with somebody else. Now, understand that you still have to pay OF&G your licensing fee with them in terms of for your organic license, the same with Soil Association. But this is the inspection side of things. If you're not a member, a licensee of OF&G or what have you, the cost is slightly more. And so you would pay 100, and so in that case you pay £186. We've just got beef, £186 plus VAT per year for 3 years. And the costs go up with the more enterprises you've got because they'll have to spend more time on farm looking at what's going on. So that is a kind of it in a very short nutshell. Yeah. Are there any questions in the chat I need to know about? No more questions in the chat at the moment. Excellent. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Nigel Franklin. He's got to be there somewhere. There he is. Who is, as I said before, one of our supply chain managers, and will kind of give you hopefully an overview on his experience now. They've been doing it for a while. Him and Rob, I think, is also on the call, of what benefits they're seeing from being a certified producer. Thanks, Nigel.
Hello, right. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I think probably go back to kind of start where Andy set off with saying about certification. I think probably you need to think about the fact that the financial side of it shouldn't be the biggest driver. However, if we feel we can get a premium for the product once it carries that certification, it's obviously a really nice benefit. And so that is one of the main things that Rob and I are working on. So if I talk about my own experience, my wife and I run a small farm in Surrey. We took the decision a couple of years ago to go for certification. And what that does, if you're selling direct or if you're selling to a butcher, it gives you that standard support behind you to sort of talk about the standards and give some clarity of how your production method's working. It gives you a big story, particularly when you're talking to the general public. I use the branding quite heavily in our small shop, and I refer to it an awful lot when I'm talking to new customers. This has enabled us to grow our turnover in the small shop from doing one side a month all the way through to doing 2 bodies a month in a 2-year period. So I think we've been reasonably successful, and I absolutely guarantee we would not have done that had it not been for our certification standards. The other thing to mention is you start off selling direct thinking you're going to sell to the local market. You very quickly realise it isn't the local market. It is predominantly people that are looking for this produce, and they're prepared to travel anything up to an hour and a half to come to you to buy direct. So moving on from that, to focus a little bit more on the supply chain role that we're performing. Obviously, we're very much trying to build the profile of Pasture for Life and the certified produce. We are dealing with a whole range of potential purchasers, from very small high street shops, the high street butchers, who are prepared to just buy a side of beef off a farmer, all the way to actually dealing with very large businesses that are increasingly more interested in the story behind Pasture for Life. You know, we've been talking for quite a long time to a number of very, very large food department stores in central London. There's a few conversations been going on with supermarkets and so on and so forth. So I suppose what I'm getting across is there's a benefit in the marketplace for small farms and also some very large producers. As time goes by, it's a slow process, but definitely the interest is gaining, and there most definitely is a premium available, even though the market seems to be pretty tough out there at the moment. That's really it from me. Again, the main thing to understand is Rob and I are here to help you. So please don't hesitate. Phone us, email us. Yeah, get on a Zoom call with us. We are happy to help in any way we possibly can. That's kind of it from me, Philippa. Are there any questions?
There are some questions, but more linked to what Philippa was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But you might be able to help with this, Nigel. What does it mean to take responsibility for your butcher if you do direct sales?
Well, I think you need complete transparency with your butcher, in the sense that if you are selling to the public, it's your product. You're guaranteeing it's a certified produce. You need to make sure it doesn't get mixed up with anyone else's. You know, there have been some mix-ups at the abattoir. We're all well aware of that, especially when it comes down to things like offal. But you need to really get the message across that cannot be allowed to happen. There's also a little bit of speculation that sometimes we may sell produce to a butcher and he may put it on the counter, and it might not be that produce. But at the moment, we are doing all of this on trust. So I think you need to build a relationship with if you're using a contract butcher, build a relationship with your butcher that you feel you absolutely trust him. If not, you move on to someone else.
And can you just clarify in terms of through the process, where would that be recorded? I'm aware, Nigel and Andy, I think you both do your own butchery. So I don't know, maybe if Philippa, how are other certified farms who are using an additional, like an external butcher, are they having to record that somewhere?
So that will be done through tracks. But as I said, tracks will probably be phased out. So we'll look at how we do that. So so say, for example, say if Nigel wasn't doing his own butchery, then and was using somebody else, he could still complete the butchery form based on this relationship that he's got with his butcher. And is, as I say, is taking responsibility for that he's confident and comfortable how that's all being done.
Yeah, I in fact don't do my own butchery. I was actually using the guys at NEP, and I had a very, very good relationship with those guys, going to visit them regularly. And I've literally just moved to a new butcher, and again, we visit them regularly. Yeah, it's all done on numbers. You inspect the carcass, make sure the carcass is tagged, and that's the way we work.
Amazing. And also, Talis, obviously I know whereabouts you're based because you're not far from here, and I think your butcher is already Pasture for Life certified, the one that you've used previously. And I guess that's the other thing, is as a member and someone who's certified, using the forum maybe to find butchers locally who are already certified would be a really easy way to kind of manage that process if you're not sure. And Beck wants to know, what do we do if there isn't an approved abattoir nearby?
Okay, so as I said earlier, obviously we know that we're losing them at an alarming rate. But if you are already using an abattoir, tell me who they are, and I will look at them, or I will look at somebody. I know the ideal world is that you're not having to travel and take those animals very far from your farm. So just let me know who you are using or think you might use, and I can let you know whether they're whether they're approved or not.
There's another question, which is, what are the costs for annual inspections as opposed to triannual?
Yep, so they are more expensive, but they come in at around £400 per year plus VAT for one enterprise, which is why people like to do the triennial agreement, because it does cost it spreads the cost, and it is slightly cheaper. The cost of certification is basically the cost of an inspector turning up at your farm. That's what it covers.
I have a question that isn't on the chat yet. So I wanted to ask clarity about numbers of enterprises, and because this is something that I find comes up quite a lot when I talk to people who are looking to become certified. So let's say they've got sheep and they run cattle and they want to certify their cattle but not their sheep. Is that possible? And then also, if they've got different cattle herds, where does that sit? So just a bit of clarification around some of those tricky questions that we get asked.
Okay, so you don't have to certify every enterprise on your farm. You can absolutely just do your beef or just do your sheep. We do not, however, allow dual production. So you can't have 100 beef cattle doing one thing and 100 beef cattle doing another thing, unless they are completely geographically separate. So that is possible. We need to make sure that the animals who are going for certification, who are certified, can't nibble at some grain, can't get hold of something because actually, the bulls get this and what have you. So it's very important that we understand that split. So dual enterprises are not really allowed unless we know there is that split. If, for example, you've got sheep, different breeds of sheep, again, if they're kept separately and fed separately, that's fine. But if they mingle, then it would have to be the whole flock.
So our sheep enterprise is not certified, but our cattle one is. Sheep enterprise was being run by another member of the family on the farm, but was very into showing. So we're early lambing, quite a bit of supplementation. But interestingly, they are now lambing a bit later. They're not supplementing with any hard feed, and they've moved to using a few other ways of doing it. And so I think over time that will come on board. With us, we have to keep it separate, so it goes through the same butchery, but my website is just beef, and you cannot buy lamb on it. And then the other member of the family sells their lamb in a different channel. So the customer is very clear when they come to my website what they're buying. And I think you have to make sure you do that. It's really important. But it does allow people at different stages to move at different speeds, which is really good.
There's a question about, if the local abattoir isn't approved, is that prohibitive to being certified? But I think you maybe just answered that already, Philippa, which is just to let you know, and you will do whatever checks need to happen, maybe your end, because yeah, okay. So no, it's not prohibitive, I guess, is the answer to the question. David has another question. So as someone who doesn't direct sell, so this one's for you, Nigel. How much of a market is there for pasture for life produce? Are any supermarkets interested in selling it? My aim is to become certified, but should we wait for when the demand is there, or do you need the suppliers certified first to put on offer in the market? Chicken and egg question. It
is the chicken and egg, yes. The demand for supply is steadily growing. I'm not going to say rapidly, it's a steady demand. Certainly in the southeast, we're almost at the point where the demand is greater than the supply. Distance is always a bit of a problem. We have had a number of big supermarkets express interest, but currently there wouldn't be the supply available in the country to fulfill it. So my response would be go for certification and come to us and we'll try and find the market for you.
I would also add that, so I'm selling between 1 and 3 carcasses a month to butchers off my own back. 2 of those butchers were Pasture for Life members, and I found them by getting ahead of myself, having a half a carcass spare, which I advertised on the forum, and from that I picked up a butcher that buys 1 carcass every month throughout the year, and that has been great, really good. So the other one was Pasture for Life member who's got his own butchery and just needs more throughput, and he's wanting 1 a week at the moment, which I can't supply all of that. And then I've got another guy that's a Pasture for Life member, non-farming member, talked to his local butcher and basically sort of kind of sold him the Pasture for Life story. And so he is hopefully coming online in a month or 2. So you can, there's an intermediate way between direct retailing, prepackaged retail meat, and being part of a much bigger Pasture for Life supply chain, is to actually work with your abattoir to get your carcasses to a butcher. I've actually now bought a little trailer fitted out with meat rails, and I deliver to one butcher because he's kind of outside of the sort of abattoir network. That is time, that is effort, but it is worth doing for me. Yeah.
I think Rob wants to come in.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Rob here. Sorry, I've not got my camera on. It seems to be doing a bit of a Zoom blink for some reason. Yeah, I was just going to bring in a couple of things. First of all, just coming back to the abattoir traceability integrity point. Nigel and I, just so it's on your radar really, Nigel and I are exploring the ability to use a Pasture for Life stamp in the abattoirs. So like organic stamps and FSA stamps, we're exploring that at the moment. So we're just trying to understand how that can work with logistics and cost and implementation and stuff like that. And then, so my other point was just to come to the chicken and egg point really, which was to sort of raise the profile of the survey that we put out in the newsletter last week, which is all about building a picture. So as we sort of alluded to in the feature in the newsletter, when we're having these discussions, it's really important that we have the opportunity to see a picture that we can then talk about with customers. And that's what the survey is all about. So it's the opportunity for us to gather information from members, whether they're certified or not, to understand intention for certification, numbers and stuff like that. So my plea is tonight, I suppose, first of all, a thank you to anybody who's on here tonight who has done the survey, really appreciate it. And secondly, a plea to those who haven't, just to drop into it and just, it should only take a couple of minutes. It's all on a Google sheet, and put as much information as you can in there, because it will help us then with conversations as we build a picture about what Pasture for Life, certified or not, looks like. Thank you.
There's a question about who is it best to contact if we have a specific query regarding one of the standards. That'll be Philippa. And that's via phone or email, which all the contact details are on the website, I think, aren't they, Philippa?
Yeah, they are.
Amazing. Mark's asked a question about where do the PfL standards depart from those laid down by FABL, so Farm Assured British Beef and Lamb, I think that's FABL. How much overlap? I would say they are significantly different, but happy for others to jump in.
I would have to come back to you on that one, Mark.
Does anyone else want to jump in with those? I can offer some thoughts on that if that's helpful at all. Andy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so in England, that's essentially red tractor. And so red tractor are not concerned with what is being fed, or that, yeah, that's what I take them to mean. They're also not particularly interested in your environmental credentials. They are interested in manure slurry records to some degree, and nitrogen records. But yeah, so Pasture for Life is very much interested in what you are feeding them, and they are interested in your environmental credentials, your pasture management, your forage management, that side of things. And I think I would have to check, look carefully at the sort of animal health and welfare parts around things you can and can't do to your cows and calves, because I think they might be a bit stricter. So there is a significant difference. It was more of a difference than I thought when we went into it, but we have got through it all and it's all fine and we're better for it.
Yeah, I would say that for QMS in Scotland and Hubby Key Cymru in Wales, that the health and welfare standards of Pasture for Life are significantly higher and actually align with the organic standards. And I only know that because I sit on the standards review committee, and so this is like something I've just been learning about. There's also very different requirements for animals being outside, so that's a key part of Pasture for Life certification, whereas for example with QMS in Scotland there is no requirement for animals to go outside at all in their life. So there's a number of things like that, and also relating to medications and vet med and things like that. So they are definitely not proxies for each other, and there's, I think, probably more difference than similarity, but as Andy said, it's worth looking into that in a bit more detail. Right, another question. Talis says, did you say you could have an online audit in the first year, or is that only if you are already OF&G license holder?
It is possible. We would just need to probably find out why you want it done that way around. In the ideal world, you'd have inspection in the first year so that we can, really get to grips with who you are and what you're doing. But if there is a particular reason that you wanted to get certified quicker, then I would have a conversation with OF&G to see if that was.
Question from Martin. We borrow a bull for breeding purposes. Is it a deal breaker if it is not from a certified farm? And I would also add to that question, some people send their bulls away to live somewhere else at different times of the year. So yeah, how do you deal with that, Philippa?
How we deal with that is that the bulls have to be Pasture for Life fed when they are on your farm. So if you are, just borrowing it in from a non-certified farm, that would be allowed, but on your farm, they have to be fed just grass and forage. And the same with people who send their bulls off. Yeah, same thing. They'd have to be following Pasture for Life standards whilst they are on your farm.
Another question that springs to my mind. So if you've got a farm that's looking to certify and they have got a number of breeding cows that they've brought in, but those cows haven't necessarily come from Pasture for Life farms, can they be certified, or is it just their offspring that the owner has complete clarity on their sort of life history? Where does the certification start for the herd?
Yeah, so it starts if you've bought in from a certified farm, then it's a given that those animals are going to be fine to be certified on your farm. If you're buying in calf heifers, for example, if they've come from a non-certified farm, even if you're comfortable with where they've come from, the cows themselves would not be able to be certified, but as long as the calves went straight from milk to grass, the calves would be certified.
Perfect. And Anna says, it's perhaps in the doc, but tree hay, ? I'm assuming she means, can you feed tree hay? Yes.
Yes. Cows in trees, Nikki, cows in trees.
Indeed. If it wasn't allowed, I'd get very upset, Philippa. What is the view on grazing livestock on arable ground post-harvest? There will be the chance of spilt grain on the ground.
My personal view is that it shouldn't be allowed because of that grain thing. One of the things that we thought about, or has been thought about strongly, is that there are people who have terrible allergies to grain. So if they don't know that these animals, and they kind of assume that the animals have been pasture fed because they've got certification, but actually at some stage those because the grain can stay in, I think, quite a long time, then that can cause a health problem for humans. So I would probably need to get clarification on that from Anna Heaton. I
would also suggest that one way around that, and I would imagine Anna would probably be okay with this, but I would, obviously you're going to check, would be that if that arable ground would have to have been undersown, and you're grazing whatever it was undersown with. So for example, if, I don't know, you had spring barley and you just put an undersown perennial ryegrass in, for example, then there's much lower risk of that grain getting into the animal's diet. So just grazing on stubbles, I think would be problematic. But if there's an undersown grass lay, for example, going in, or something undersown, then I think that would be less of an issue, and potentially then with bales out as well. There's a question about, we only have 14 cattle, we're only killing out 2 or 3 a year, are we too small?
No, not too small, but just do consider the cost of certification around, are you going to get extra, is it, as Andy was saying, is it more about, sort of being trustworthy, sort of, showing your credentials, or is there a sort of a financial risk breaker in there for you?
And I would say, so we're not certified on our farm yet. We've started the process, and we'll be aiming for certification. But the reason we weren't certified was exactly that. It would have cost, that's a large beef box that it costs for us to certify, and I couldn't justify losing that on just 4 animals a year. So it's a really good way to become a member and practice and get all your ducks in a row, and dot your I's and cross your T's. And then if you want to get to a point where you've got really good business and you've got money coming in and that you can afford it and it makes financial sense, then it's a good time to do it, and it's ready then for when you're going to grow, if that is something you want to do.
Yeah, can I just come in there? I'll be honest, my maths around it, even if you're just producing 3 carcasses a year and selling direct, if you tell the story correctly with the certification, you will more than pay for that £300 a year extra. You should put at least a 10% premium on the sale of your meat. Okay.
Right, we've gone slightly over time, so I'm sorry about that. But if anyone does, membership at pastureforlife.org or certification at pastureforlife.org. We'll put this webinar up on our YouTube channel. I'll get that done tomorrow. So just shout. If you've got any questions at all, just get in touch, whether it be email or phone. Always happy to have a look and talk you through anything you need to know. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Nigel and to Andy, and to Nikki for being great tech support person as ever. I think good night to everybody.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.